Yesterday, Yunhai, Su, and King Swan's cultivators brought their set of ancestor to Senior Chen's house, or Yunhai's father, whom he usually calls Grandpa Murong, to Senior Chen's house. Chen then invited them to have a meal, because it happened to be Chan at that time, had just returned from shopping at the market. Then when they were sitting at the dining table waiting for Senior Chen was still in his prime in the kitchen, Murong, whose hands were nosy, was holding the items on the table. When his hands just touched these items, his body suddenly went weak and helpless. Here, he finally realized that all the items in Senior Chen's house were high-grade artifacts. Everyone, maybe you have also forgotten that before, Murong's grandfather also made a bet with Yunhai about whether Senior Chen Yang's strength was true or not, where he bet thousands of spirit stones or some kind of precious stone in this world, and he bet on Senior Chen's strength that Yunhai told him was pure nonsense. But after seeing Senior Chen with his own eyes, he finally acknowledged Senior Chen's strength that he practically lost the bet, then said to Yunhai that the spirit stones would be handed over when they returned. Apparently, the three of them didn't care anymore again about the bet because their only thought at that time was waiting for food served by Senior Chen. Unexpectedly, it seems that just by smelling the aroma produced by this Champingan dish, they can all increase their cultivation and say that the aroma contains pure aura, which is useful for their cultivation. As a result, when the dish is ready, it only takes a matter of seconds. All of these blessing seekers had eaten everything, and even because of how fast Champingan had not time to eat anything. Even though it had made them all increase in cultivation quite a lot, at the same time Senior Chen was also a bit annoyed. After that he told them to just go home and cultivate because they are cultivators. Even though they were actually kicked out by Senior Chen, but it seems that Grandpa Murong took the expulsion as advice or teachings from Senior Chen, that if they have eaten something that increases their cultivation, they must stabilize the cultivation obtained by the instant method. Then when they are on the way, King Swan received news from his father named Zhang Xiaofeng that his sect called Illusionary Moon Sect was in a critical condition because it was being attacked by a cultivator. So there is another sect called Illusionary Moon Sect with King Swan as the leader, and it has not been explained here whether this Illusionary Moon Sect is a branch of the Mountain Sect or what. Certain is that apart from being an elder or superior of the Mountain Sect, this King Swan. Back again, King Swan's father, Zhang Xiaofeng, he sent a telepathic message to King Swan, asking King Swan not to come back yet because his sect was being attacked by a cultivator at the definition level with the motive of revenge, because apparently Zhang Xiaofeng had previously defeated the cultivator, so it ended revenge like that. Because the level of his own definition was already considered high enough and Zhang Xiaofeng himself had not yet reached the definition level of cultivation, he finally lost, and then came King Swan bringing Grandfather Murong, who after that managed to defeat the cultivator with just one move, because it seems that after eating at the senior's house, Murong's grandfather's cultivation level has also managed to rise to a definition as well, just like that cultivator. Quickly, in here finally Murong told Zhang Xiaofeng all about Senior Chen. Then after hearing the story, Zhang Xiaofeng, of course, asked to meet with this Chen Senior. Then it was felt that there was a sizable aura coming from the direction of Senior Chen's house, and even the wave of the aura caused a small earthquake that these cultivators could feel. They then went to check on Senior Chen's house, and it turned out that there was a portal like that which they called a secret cave that was connected to another dimension called a secret round, so Murong said, connected to the portal can be quite large, and if it manifests or dimensions come out of the portal, so it can flatten the city below it. Fortunately, then a golden dragon comes out of Senior Chen's yard, which after that moves the portal away from Senior Chen's house, which of course made Zhang Xiaofeng at that time very surprised that there was also a dragon apparently in Senior Chen's yard. Then after that Murong explained that there was not only a dragon inside, but there was even Phoenix, who he said this Phoenix was famous for being able to command dragons or king of beasts that haven't appeared here. Here revealed that Phoenix's was based on Murong grandfather's words, the odds were higher than that of the golden dragon. Then without thinking for a long time, these cultivators went to make it a priority to destroy the portal first so as to be able to save people like that. At the same time, there was an artifact in the form of a sword which managed to escape from the pursuit of a sect called the Blood Moon Sect in the immortal world, and he managed to escape to the world where champions lived. This sword was later found by Champingan and then put in his plant basket, and this made the swordsman wonder how could an ordinary human hold him without getting hurt at all, because apparently he is a very powerful artifact, and he said even in the immortal world many people use it willing to be his follower. So the swordsman here thought maybe because he was injured, so someone like this Campingen, who had no foundation at all, could hold him. The sword's words apparently made Chamberlain's hoe, who was also in the basket, then angry, and then ordered the swordsman to be quiet. Seeing the hoe's level, which turned out to be much higher than the sword finally obeyed the hoe, and then Champingen remembered that he hasn't taken the prize from the previous mission, which was the mission to enter the mountain sect, so he here spins the prize, and apparently gets a gift of a flute which he also puts in the basket, and it turns out that the flute artifact is also of a much higher level than the sword. Even when he was at home, the sword was shocked because all the objects there were much stronger than him, and he was also in a difficult position because he had underestimated Champingen earlier, so that all the artifacts there didn't like him. On the other hand, the cultivators were seen trying to destroy the dimensional portal that was shifted by the golden dragon, but they were having such a hard time that even Grandpa Muro, who was at the divinity level, couldn't do anything. Zhang Xiaofeng then suggested asking Senior Chen for help, but Muro did not agree with this suggestion, and he said maybe Senior Chen already knew of this portal. At the same time, Chan apparently had trouble sleeping because he was disturbed by the noise of cultivators trying to destroy the portal. Here the kitchen knife does not accept that the master is disturbed by sleep, so then intervenes to deal with the portal and finally manages to destroy the portal with just one move. After the portal is destroyed, a female immortal appears whose body is restrained by a black chain, which is then chained was destroyed along with the destruction of the portal earlier. Grandpa Muro here said that the secret realm or the portal dimension might be the prison used to confine the woman. They all then gave up there, because even escaping would be impossible if they were faced with an immortal, so that far was the difference in strength between cultivators who weren't at the immortal level and immortal cultivators, but apparently they didn't panic here. Even Muro had joked about Zhang Xiaofeng to approach the woman, because earlier she asked to be met with Senior Chen Yang, who was an immortal. Actually, because there was still Senior Chen's kitchen knife, they believed was enough to take care of the woman. The kitchen knife then asked the lady, "Who are you?" This woman apparently unceremoniously directly attacked the kitchen knife, even though this attack was easily stopped with one move. Then the kitchen knife said cultivators from the world of immortals are all trashed. Muro and Zhang Xiaofeng then wondered about what the kitchen knife said. If people from the immortal world were considered trash by the kitchen knife, then how strong was Senior Chen, or lived in what kind of world was the Senior Chen before? So they were quite goosebumps. Back to the kitchen knife, then touches the woman's head, then the scene shows a flashback of the small version of the woman and a man who then attacks her until the small version of the woman looks quite in pain, then after the flashback the woman becomes unconscious. This extremely brief made the cultivators, who saw quite self-aware and scared enough that they were of no use at all, to the extent that this knife Senior Chen had to intervene himself. After telling everyone there not to tell anyone about the incident, the kitchen knife then took the woman back to Master Chen's house. Then when he arrived at the peach tree's house, then manifested into a woman, and after seeing the woman under the kitchen knife, exactly I was shocked then, said really immortal, who was very cruel to a child. Peach then issued a technique that succeeded in changing the woman's form into a child like she said earlier, and also like a flashback from the previous woman. After this child realized, Peach then erased her memory, then told her to consider that place as her home and consider Master Campingen as his own brother. The sword was found by Campingen earlier, had a peek at what was happening then. After seeing the figure of the girl, he apparently recognized the girl named Suling, who was the daughter of the immortal emperor, or the emperor of the immortal world. So with this incident, the sword said for sure the immortal emperor would not just silently waiting for her if someone bothered her daughter. And what the sword said really happened. At the same time, in the immortal world, the immortal emperor seemed to have realized the destruction of the secret realm he made, and his daughter Suling has regained her consciousness back. To being mortal emperor orders some people to go to the mortal world and look for his daughter. The next day, Flute, who had returned to his child form, woke Champingen, or his older brother. Of course, here Chen was very surprised. Why could a small child suddenly wake him up even though he lived alone? And so on, Champingen decided to accompany the Suling to look for her house in the city. Maybe she got lost, and then straight into his house. After an hour of turning, Suling instead led Champingen back to his house, because when Suling was asked where the house was going, she said go there and just go there, but in the end it came back to Chen's house. Apparently Suling, according to what the peach tree said yesterday, indeed Chen's house was his own home. This made Champingen quite confused whether perhaps the Suling had lost her memory, and because he couldn't bear to tell the Suling to leave, Chen finally decided to let the Suling stay with him. Then Grandpa Murong brought Zhang Xiaofeng to be introduced to Senior Chen, and then, because there was a Suling there too, Chen finally introduced Suling to these grandparents as his sister, who was also an ordinary person who said she was not a cultivator. Because the Suling was visible from the eyes of these cultivators, she also exuded a terrible aura, because she was also an immortal, before making the two of them, especially Zhang Xiaofeng, who had not yet lost his shock at seeing Senior Chen, was made even more surprised to see her sister, even though they were still very young, but their cultivation level was already far above grandfather's. These two are wondering if these brothers and sisters are already very strong at a fairly young age. What about their parents? Who exactly is this champion? Then they eat and hear Suling apparently told Chen to just sit down while she would cook. Unexpectedly, it turned out that Suling's cooking was much better than Champingan's, until Chen's pot artifact said he had finally found his heart's idol, because this pot was also Suling's cooking, can increase one's cultivation just like Champingan's cooking. So it's actually not something that Champingan serves, but apparently because of the artifact that can increase one's cultivation because of the food or drink. Zhang Xiaofeng cultivation, who was like Murong before, had no progress in cultivation. He could rise to the same divinity level as Murong. Then the next day, Murongsu had a guest from the Emperor's princess from the mortal world named Luolinking, and a man named Lulu Saoji, who turned out to be Lulu Saoji used to bully Su because her cultivation was lower. Because since Su knew Senior Chen cultivation, this had already risen a lot, so immediately flaunted her cultivation to Saoji, which made Saoji collapse in surprise. Lanking also then asked Su, how could she go up that fast? Did she have something to do with the sword spirit yesterday, she said. So apparently a few days ago, when Lanking was relaxing with her father, they saw a red sword spirit passing by, and then they destroyed a lot of hills, and they thought maybe the sword was accidentally dropped by a high-level cultivator. So Lanking said that many powerful cultivator at that time came there to look for the sword spirit, one of which was Lanking, who also planned to look for the sword. Su, who didn't like it with Saoji then taking Lanking away while telling her about Senior Chen, whereas previously Murong's grandfather had forbidden Su to tell Senior Chen to other people for fear of disturbing him, but Su actually then took Lanking to Senior Chen's house. And as usual, when in Chen House Lanking's yard, at first she was quite afraid of the artifacts in the house, but because Su himself said it was okay, she then got up the courage and introduced herself to Senior Chen. When she met Senior Chen, Lanking thought that Murongsu's stories about Senior Chen referred to an old master with a thick white beard, but apparently Senior Chen was a young man who was handsome and brave, so this of course made her quite surprised. After that, a Suling appeared, which was then introduced to these two women. It seemed they quite liked Suling, although they were also a little surprised by its strength. Then Champingan played the flute artifact that he got from yesterday's mission. After a few moments listening to Senior Chen's flute, Su and Lan King's cultivation level increased again because, as usual, whatever Champingan said or did usually had a huge effect on his cultivators. Then the sword artifact that Chen found yesterday was also heavily injured. He was healed by listening to Senior Chen's flute, so at that moment the artifact began to realize that it was only natural that this Champanian could collect fees without any problems. Apparently Master Chen was a very powerful being, and from that moment on this artifact decided not to leave the house. After this woman's cultivation increase, and because she was happy, Lanking offered herself to serve Senior Chen, but of course Champingan refused immediately. So they just thanked and went home. On the way, Lanking was also sad because she was rejected by Senior Chen, but then she showed an artifact to the hope that he would use it to record the senior's flute playing that the two of them had played earlier. Then looked for a place to listen the recording while cultivating, and apparently the technique of listening to this recording succeeded in raising their cultivation a few more levels, so they thought that if it continued like this they could automatically become immortal quickly like that. But apparently suddenly the artifact exploded, so they suspected is it Senior Chen did not allow such a technique, then detonated the artifact. The explosion even made their clothes crumble, so at that moment they immediately went home, and at the same time it seems that Lusaji implanted a locator in Princess Lanking, so she knows where this Lanking has gone. Then when he saw Su and Lanking who returning home with her cultivation suddenly raised by several levels, Saoji became curious and decided to go to the place the two of them had just been to. Saoji arrived at Senior Chen's house, and as usual new people who entered Chen's courtyard would immediately be rendered powerless by the aura of the artifacts inside. Then came Senior Chen, and Suling approached Saoji, who was already weak at that time. After seeing Senior Chen, Saoji just found out that apparently there were humans who could be that strong. It was so terrible. After that, he knelt down to apologize for having trespassed into the senior's yard, and in here she doesn't know who the senior is because Sue hasn't told he yet. On the other hand, because so far no one else has come to Chen's house apart from the Murong family, moreover, Saoji also likes to kneel, strangely calling Chan as senior, so this Chen suspects that Saoji is Su's most sibling, and then says you are Su's brother. The Murong family just relaxed like that. Instead, Su thought it was impossible for Su, who wasn't familiar with him, to tell Senior Chen about himself, so he misunderstood again. Saoji thought if it was possible that just by looking at Chen Sr. one time he could know his identity. What a very strong creature, Saoji thought. Then Suling appeared, and when Suji saw Suling he felt a very strong aura too. Saoji once again knelt down and called Suling with the name Senior. This made Champingen quite irritated and said everyone was called Senior. Then, because this Saoji was quite sweaty, because he was actually very nervous. Chen thought maybe he was sick, then gave Saoji advice to balance between cultivation and rest, then don't kneel too often. Chen said, because the Chinese proverb says kneeling for a long time blood can't flow to the knees, based on Senior Chen's words about blood flowing to knees and etc., Saoji apparently thought it was all advice for his cultivation. Then, after thinking for a while to digest the meaning of the senior's words, he suddenly managed to create a new technique for himself, making these legs somehow very strong and could walk on air freely. Then, after thanking Senior Chen for this teaching, he then left. The next day, when Champingen and Suling were shopping, Chen started to notice that there were quite a lot of new faces in Pingon, or the area near Chen's house, and they all looked like cultivators. So according to what Lang King said to Su a few days ago, that there quite a lot of cultivators were looking for traces of sword spirits, or actually Champingen's kitchen knife yesterday. Here Fine explained the kitchen knife, because as a result of his actions now Champingen's master's piece can be disturbed by these cultivators from the other side. Unfortunately, all of Chen's artifacts apparently can't get out of the house unless it's brought by Chen himself, or there is a very urgent condition. If they leave the house without permission, they will get punishment or trouble like that. Then the kitchen knife gave mission to the sword so he can go in and out of the house. He freely said especially thanks to Master Chen his wounds were almost healed, so the contents of the kitchen knife gave the sword a task to lead cultivators who came to other places so as not to disturb Chen. Because the result of the sword was afraid of the knife, he respectfully departed to carry out the mission given. Then went to the place where the former portal was in yesterday's place, which was quite a mess, and was still messing up the place even more, so that some people who came later thought that the sword was indeed the artifact that fell yesterday, which they were looking for. There are several people who are trying to catch the sword. One of them is a man named Long Oshan, who is the leader or owner of a tower called Tianzuan or Tianzone Tower. So, how strong is Long Oshan? Whether he can defeat Champingen's strength, we will find out in the next episode.